I want to welcome everybody to our special NCAA preview show. We're specifically talking about Iowa's first-round matchup against the Auburn Tigers, and a special treat. We've got our post-game savant, Mr. Gary Close, Coach Gary Close. How you doing today,
Savant. Gary? Man, that's impressive.
I'm building my vocabulary, Gary, so it's a new one to add to the dictionary. How you doing? I'm assuming you've enjoyed the first 2 days of March Madness.
Yeah, for the most part, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Those playing games. The one was pretty good last night, and I think this one coming up will be pretty good. The other two games were just all right, but it's going to get fun here quickly.
It appears as we're starting the show out, looks like Farley Dickinson, they are in control against a Texas Southern team that has a bad record, but got in as an AQ. So, anyways, I digress. We got Steve Alford and his Wolfpack coming up here later this evening. But in the meantime, we've got a special treat and special guest. Former Hawkeye Nicholas Baer is with us. Nicholas, how you doing, sir?
Hey, fellas, doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So, first of all, before we get into we're going to get into the game. We're going to get into the bracket. Got about an hour to talk here. I first want to get both of your takes on. Well, first of all, before we get into that, can we talk about your background? You two know each other. Sounds like, Gary, you recruited Nicholas back in the day. Am I correct in saying that?
A little bit, yeah. I was trying to recall that myself. You'll have to refresh my memory, but yeah, I do recall that. He was our kind of player, and obviously he proved me right with his career at Iowa. So, he filled me in a little bit. So you were.
Yeah, so I played on Ethan Happ's AAU team.
There you go.
So I played with Ethan. So Coach Close was at all of our games for that reason mostly. But I had a chance to kind of as we progressed a little bit and towards the end of my high school career was thinking about just the different options out of college or going into college. And I think Coach had a chance to watch me a little bit on the AAU circuit that way.
Yep. And he reminded me a lot of Ryan Bowen. Which was kind of the same scenario. Everybody's recruiting Ray Flafrenz, who was a dynamic player, and Ryan played on his same AAU team, and we just so we got to see him a lot, and he just kind of grew on us as we watched their team play. So he had a terrific career. It wasn't as much fun watching it from afar as I would have a little closer, but your career was outstanding.
Thanks. Yeah, no, loved it. Loved getting a chance to play at Iowa and just really get a chance to put on the Iowa jersey. Always been a dream. So enjoyed that and always enjoy getting a chance to play against Wisconsin too. Always get fun matchups that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Did that game mean? I mean, I know it meant a little bit more to guys like Jordan Bohannon, Nicholas, but I mean, you were. I know you're not from Wisconsin, but I mean, did that game seem to mean more to teams that you played on?
Yeah, it had a little bit more of an edge to it. I think part of it's too like the contrasting styles of both programs kind of going against each other a little bit as well. It was always a bit more fun for me too, knowing Ethan, you get a chance to go up against Ethan and obviously seeing the great success, he had and continues to have here professionally. So that game was always fun. And fun fact, I actually enjoyed playing in Madison. I liked the Sterling balls. So I liked getting a chance to shoot with those. So that was always a good time getting a chance to go up there and had some good memories playing against Wisconsin for sure. And some bad ones, unfortunately.
Nicholas, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't your I could be wrong on this. Wasn't your last trip to Madison the Jabo 3 that I believe you had the game-winning rebound to secure that win?
No, I think we played there. We played there one other time. So we were there. Ethan Happ's senior night was there, so we played them then. But yeah, the Bohannon 3 comeback win, that was a big time. And that was my favorite memories as a Hawk for sure. So.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm guessing Jordan would say the same thing. Gary, you were not coaching.
No.
You probably remember that shot. Were you at the Cole Center?
They wouldn't have gotten that rebound if I'd have been coaching.
That's true.
And Jordan would have never been left open.
Were you at the Cole Center for that game, Coach?
No. I was at the senior game, but I wasn't at the other one.
Okay. Well, we got a lot of people that want to talk to both of you, and we got a lot to talk about. So let's dive into this. Coach, you and I haven't talked in front of everybody since the selection show on Sunday, and a lot has happened since the selection show. I know a lot of people have been critical about Rutgers being left out. I think most of us expected Wisconsin and Michigan to be left out of the field, given their seasons and lack of success in the Big Ten tournament. I did not expect to see Rutgers left out, especially with that win against Michigan on day one, but they come back in the NIT and lose to Hofstra at home. So
Yeah.
I don't know if, if you can play the transitive property with this, Gary, but just your thoughts on the Big Ten getting just 8 teams in and then what Rutgers followed it up with.
Yeah, I was surprised Rutgers didn't get in either. I almost assumed they were going to get in. That was a surprise to me. I did watch a little bit of their game against Hofstra. It was a kind of an up and down game, and they didn't play as well defensively as they'd been playing. They're a pretty good, pretty solid defensive team, and then they, like a couple games this year, they could not finish it. I mean, they had a chance to win that game and just could not finish it. The game in Minnesota was even more wilder in terms of blowing a lead at the end, and that probably cost them the NCAA bid. So got to be frustrating for them because they had a pretty good team at times. They really played good basketball, and unfortunately, they didn't play it enough to get in the dance. So their season pretty sour taste in their mouth, I'm sure, the way that ended.
Nicholas, any surprises on Sunday for you watching the different teams selected?
Yeah, I mean, the Rutgers, I honestly kind of assumed, I didn't even think they would be in the playing game. I thought they'd just, get a chance to be like a straight up 11 seed, just get a chance to watch them this year, how tough they play. I thought they had some good quality wins, but kind of like Coach mentioned, dropped a few, especially to Minnesota specifically. That one's going to hurt. And kind of going back to losing the first round of the NIT, I don't necessarily think that's indicative either. I think as someone who's played in the NIT, it's kind of depends who wants to show up for that event, I think that's kind of the biggest thing with that tournament is who, really wants to be there. And for Hofstra, I'm sure that was a big deal for them. You're getting a chance to be in the NIT, play some postseason ball, and Rutgers maybe not as much. But I would say I was, looking forward to hopefully getting a few more Big Ten teams in there and, looking forward to seeing how the Big Ten does here in the tournament.
I didn't watch that whole game, Gary. I watched a condensed version of the Hofstra-Rutgers game. It's hard for me to get pumped up for the NIT when you got NCAA tournament games coming up. But I wonder if that's the same effect on the players, right? I've never played or coached this level, so you two have a much better authority on this subject. But kind of what Nicholas alluded to, I would just think that, playing 2 days removed from having your sports heart ripped out of your soul, so to speak. I know maybe using embellishing language. I would just think it'd be hard to get up for a game. What's weird about how that game transpired is Rutgers kind of got off to a quick start. But Hofstra is, they were arguably they're the best team in that conference. That's why they're playing in the NIT because they won their conference outright. So anyways, we don't want to make this into a Rutgers show. Last thing I'll say on it, Gary, and I talked about it on Sunday during the live Selection Sunday show. I do wonder, it's been brought up before, but I do wonder with the committee, I believe the committee cited the Mawat Mag injury in their reasoning as to why Rutgers was left out. I still wonder if setting somewhat of a precedent for future instances and coaches potentially not being as transparent about injuries. What reason, moving forward, what reason would Steve Pikiell have to ever announce that Mag is out for the season? Even if hey, a guy's not going to play the rest of the year, why not leave that window open? That way the committee doesn't count it against you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously, if he's not playing, then they're gonna figure it out. They're trying to get the best teams in there, and that's obviously it affected Rutgers. That kid doesn't get hurt, they probably are in it. He was that important, and you got to give him credit for hanging in there and making it competitive. But that's just part of the selection process that you got to live with, and I don't know how much importance they put on it. I think the other things are probably more important. But if it's close, then like this was, then it could be a detriment.
I just kept hearing that line of reasoning. Well, we're getting the Rutgers team without Mag, so we have to evaluate them based on what we're going to see in the tournament. So anyways, we don't understand that subject. I feel bad for Steve Pikiell because I had a lot of respect for him as a head coach. Any other surprises from you, Gary, as far as the bracket is concerned, or maybe potential matchups that you're really looking forward to seeing these next 2 days?
I don't know if there was any real surprises. That was probably the biggest one. I think it was pretty evident up until that, who was going to get and who wasn't. So I think both Michigan and Wisconsin didn't have a good enough resume to get in. Especially the way they played in the Big Ten tournament. So I think the number one seeds were pretty accurate. Kansas probably was a bit of a surprise not going to Kansas City and having to go out west. But, other than that, it's time to play. I thought it was a little surprising, watching Iowa, that I was kind of hoping they were going to go to Des Moines. And with the 8-9 there, I thought there was a chance. And then to have Auburn get the higher seed getting to play at home, basically, that surprised me a little bit. And it's not real fair to Houston. I mean, Houston, if Auburn gets by Iowa, they're going to play an Auburn team that's playing a couple hours away from home. So, and that's a big advantage.
Yeah, and I think that's been a reaction from a lot of people. How does Auburn get to play close to home? I asked Tim Kruger of Stadium, who's a bracketologist and is part of the mock selection committee. This is what he said on that subject, why Iowa ended up having to go to Birmingham. He just said it's the way the selection process works. It happens in order. So on the 8 line, the overall 29 would get first choice on site and so on. Iowa was 32, so the last to choose. With Birmingham, the site for 2 number 1 seeds, they had a 50% chance to go there anyway. So as last on that list, they had to go to the site that was open. And as far as Auburn is concerned, it's the same thing. They were 35th, so third on that line. All they needed was one of the other teams to go elsewhere, and boom, they go to Birmingham. So then he brings up the factor of bracket procedures, etc. So there's a lot that goes into this. There is a process. Yeah. The frustration from some Iowa fans is that it is strange that Iowa has had to go basically on the road in, I think, their last 4 trips to the NCAA tournament. Essentially going on the road, right? Even when they've been the higher seed. So again, we can fall back on procedures. I was trying to find the.
So tell me that again. How do they get in the 8-9 bracket? How did that work? It's by ranking.
You want me to read that again, Gary? This is what Tim said. He says, it happens in order. On the 8 line, the overall 29 would get first choice on site and so on. Iowa was 32. So the last.
When you say first choice, you mean the highest ranked team?
I believe highest seed line. Highest seed line. Overall seed on that seed line.
So who decides who? Yeah. And then who decides what site is the.
I believe it's the I could be wrong on it. He didn't specify, but I believe it's either the teams or they just go by proximity, whatever's closest to that team.
So the 29th team got to go to as close as possible.
Correct.
And they do that with every line.
That's what Tim said.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
So it's a very complicated process. It's easy to point and say, well, this is not fair, but it is what it is, and without rules, you have chaos. So there are rules of seeding and all that. Yeah. So I don't think anybody's doing Iowa a disservice. I will say, last 4 NCAA first-round games, Iowa goes to Birmingham this year. Of course, they're the higher seed over Tigers. The Iowa-Richmond game was played in Buffalo. Iowa-Cincinnati game, Iowa was the lower seed that year. They go to Columbus. Iowa-Temple, they go to Brooklyn, and Iowa was, of course, the higher seed in that game as well. So they've had some unfortunate seeding quirks. Now, with that being said, they beat Cincinnati and they beat Temple. So Brandon McCaffrey kind of downplayed that today as being a real factor. Nicholas, I mean, how much of a factor do you think?
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, from someone who played the Temple game and the Cincinnati game, like, Temple wasn't much of a home court advantage as being in Brooklyn. Cincinnati a little bit. I think there's an advantage, but I don't think it plays an enormous factor in the overall landscape of the game. It's different, obviously, if there's like home rims or home basketballs, but it's a truly neutral court, neutral rim. There's a bit, anytime you get into the NCAA tournament, there's a bit of jitters. Like, there's some of that as well. Obviously, Auburn's going to have a few more fans, of course, but in my experience playing, like, I didn't necessarily feel like it was a huge difference. So I'm really interested to kind of see like the actual like matchup and how it goes for the Hawks here.
Yeah. I can tell you our 2014 Final Four team, we got to go to Milwaukee and we played Oregon in I might have even been in the first round, I guess it was the second round. And we were down double digits at halftime. And I don't think we would have won the game if we'd have been playing anywhere other than Milwaukee. I mean, it was a huge advantage for us. The place was 3/4 full of Wisconsin fans, and it was a big reason why we pulled that game out. And then, then we got got a couple more, but some teams travel better than others. Auburn will travel. I guarantee there are going to be a lot of Auburn fans. Now there's a bunch of other teams, so it's broken up, but it'll be interesting. But the way you got to approach it is, hey, that's the way it is. You just got to go beat them. So,
Nicholas, remind me, were you on the team that went to Spokane and played Gonzaga?
That was my redshirt. That's my redshirt year. So I was in a suit playing scout team. But yes, we were there. So I'd love to get a chance to play in Seattle. Seattle was awesome. Probably one of my favorite spots we had a chance to go.
It was Seattle. It wasn't Spokane.
No, it was Seattle. Yeah, it was in Seattle. So, but I mean, for Gonzaga, that's still pretty close to home that way. Yeah. So, we beat Davidson pretty handily, and then fell to Gonzaga. But that one was probably a little bit different. Maybe Coach Close got a point there, like if they're playing like a 2 seed, like a really good team, and they have a really strong following, that might be a bit more of a difference. Whereas like an 8-9 or like a 7-10. Following maybe a little bit different as well. But to Coach's point, I do think Auburn's probably going to travel a little bit.
And that's fair. And I again, I'll defer to you, Gary, but I was hoping, and I know a lot of people were critical of me when I said this, but I was hoping that Iowa got in Alabama's section, because I think maybe Iowa matches up a little bit better with how Alabama plays potentially, but then you're having to play a 1 seed I think that'd be a real home court advantage. So we'd rather play a 1 seed with home court advantage or a 9 seed with home court advantage. Sure. And then, of course, a 1 in Houston that's probably, proximity-wise, closer to Houston than it is to Iowa City. So I don't know, matchup-wise, we can talk about we're going to certainly talk about Auburn in a second, Gary. But as far as the 1 seeds are concerned, we basically knew Iowa was going to be on the 8-9 line. They were 1 away from being a 9. So the other options would have been Alabama, Purdue, Kansas. My guess is the committee wanted to avoid a rematch with Purdue. They could have played Purdue. By the rules of seeding, they could have played Purdue in the second round. We saw that a few years ago in Des Moines with Michigan State and Minnesota playing, because they only played Purdue once in the regular season. It ended up they get with the section with Houston. Both of these teams, Auburn and Houston, defend the 3 really well, which is that's the first thing that pops out at me when I look at the numbers to both of you. I'm looking at the stats now. 3-point percentage defense. Auburn is 5th in the country in Division I in 3-point percentage defense, and Houston is 2nd in the country. I mean, if they're gonna make the Sweet 16, Gary, they are going to have to absolutely earn it. And
no doubt. Houston's been one of the best teams all year long. Now that guard's hurt, and that's going to be crucial as to whether he can play and how well he can play, because he's really good. So if he's not playing or not at 100%, that certainly could help. But they're well coached. They're good. I mean, they don't play in a league like Big Ten, but they've ripped through that league pretty easily, and they're well coached. So, but you got to get that opportunity first. You got to beat Auburn to get that opportunity, assuming Houston wins, which they probably will. So, yeah, that's one of the first things that jumped out at me. They play it a little different than Houston. They're gonna play up and down, but they're long and they're athletic and they're quick, and like they close out pretty quick. And so I think Iowa's going to have to be careful in terms of what types of threes they take, because long, quick threes that are missed are going to allow Auburn to run, and that's where they're at their best. That's why I think it's going to be an entertaining game, because both teams like to run, but Auburn's really good running too, and not as good in the half court. So quick threes can lead to that. And so I think Iowa's got to be careful in terms of their shot selection from 3, especially quick ones.
And Nicholas, Gary always talks about matchups being of utmost importance when you get to tournament time. Would you echo that?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I know Coach touched on, quite a few good things right there. I think regardless of who Iowa plays, we want to run. Like that's, our staple. And that's, I know that's what Auburn does too, but we're definitely going to be trying to, push the pace a little bit, try and get some easy baskets. I think that's probably going to be the most critical, getting a few of those easy baskets in transition. Because I think, when Auburn has their set defense, they're going to be a little bit tougher, to score on, especially with some of that 3-point percentage and their length that way. But I think the biggest thing that I look at with this matchup is rebounding. I haven't watched a ton of Auburn basketball this year, but from what I've seen, what I had a chance to kind of look at some of their stats, they're 318th in defensive rebounding this year. So like if, I think it's a big game for Philip Brada and Chris Murray to get on the glass, get a few of those second chance shots, especially if some of those threes aren't falling. that way, and then just trying to get some easy baskets that way. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be an exciting game. Like, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be one of the most exciting games here on this Thursday.
And let's be honest. Even in the loss to Nebraska, Iowa really cleaned it up on the glass, especially on the offensive end. Patrick McCaffrey, I feel like he's rebounding better. And had a huge rebound in, I believe it was a Michigan State comeback that he doesn't afford. They probably don't win that game, and that changes seating and whatnot. So, yeah, lots to get to. We got questions in the chat. We've got people waiting on hold. Let's go ahead and hit our call line. We'll start with one of our regulars, Mr. Doug. How you doing, sir?
Good. First of all, I want to wish my niece Macy a happy birthday. It's her 13th birthday today. So we got to go to a couple Iowa games this year. Got a family photo with Hawkeye Elvis down in Florida. Went to the Emerald Coast Classic. That wasn't a good tournament for Nick a couple years ago when they went. I think he lost to Memphis and Virginia.
Yeah, a couple close ones, yeah. Or one.
Jock senior year. Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, Nick never was a part of a team that lost first round NCAA game. You went 3 and
That's true.
Yeah. It was the redshirt year with Aaron White, and then Utah, and then your senior year.
Let's be honest, Doug. There's a misnomer and a complete misconception by the public at large who's frustrated with Iowa not making the Sweet 16 since 1999. There's this misconception that Iowa just consistently goes one and done. they typically win their first round game. Last year being kind of the exception to the rule.
Yeah, I mean, Fran. Well, even if you just take away the playing game that in 13, Fran wins in the first round most of the time. I mean, what is it like? We just went over most of them, but yeah. I told you, Cory, to give me 90s Hawkeyes, not Hawkeyes that were born in the 90s. Takes my nostalgia away. Yeah, but that's good.
He plays like as Gary said, he plays like a Hawkeye from the
Ryan Bowen. Great comparison. You played a lot like Ryan Bowen from when I was a kid, so I appreciated that. Kind of same area. He was from Fort Madison, so so River City kids can play ball, and we have a couple coming in next year. So, I was also following Siena a little bit. How did your brother finally do this last year?
Yeah, had a chance to go up to quite a few of his games this past year. They ended up losing the first round of the MAC tournament, so we drove out to Atlantic City. So I had a chance to watch them. They lost a couple tight ones down the stretch towards the end of the year, but he had a great experience. Loved his time up at Siena. Had a really great opportunity to play a lot. Playing some big games against Iona on national television, having a big game that way. And I think for him, he wanted to go somewhere where we could play a lot and have a great experience, and where some of those smaller schools, they don't necessarily like have as much of a following, but Siena basketball, like, they lead the MAC in attendance every year. Like, the arena is about the size of Wells Fargo Arena here in Des Moines. So they do a pretty nice job of getting like 6,000-7,000 people there. So he had a really good experience.
Yeah. I have an off the wall question for Coach Close because it does deal with Bruce Pearl and your guys' coaching staff at Stanford. Was Kermit Washington a part of your staff at Stanford?
Yeah. The last 2 years he was on our staff there. Yeah, but he did, obviously he didn't come to Iowa. He stayed out there. I don't know if you would want to answer the second question part of that. Was he told he couldn't come here? No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, so the Dr. Tom's assistants out there were Kermit Washington, you, and Bruce Pearl.
Right.
And these two probably don't have a clue who Kermit Washington is. But
probably not. He's one of I think 4 players in the history of college basketball that averaged 20 points and 20 rebounds for their career.
So did
he was a terrific college player that made himself into an NBA player and had a long NBA career.
Yeah, it just something happened in '77, guys. That was kind of a tragedy. I mean, I don't know if he talked about it ever. I watched a couple of documentaries on it. Rudy T was my favorite coach when I was growing up. Matt Bullard and those Rocket teams were really amazing. Sorry for getting off the wall. What I was going to say about our region and kind of where we're at. First, we're going to have about 8,000 or 9,000 fans cheering for us in red and white, because all those Alabama fans are going to be cheering for us. They're at that arena. I mean, I would think. Don't they hate each other?
I know people have said that, Doug. I kind of doubt that that's going to be a big factor. But
Well, they're not sure for Auburn, are they?
You have some thoughts on that, Gary?
Well, it's a possibility. I don't think it's the way the tournament works. Now they could get tickets for the other session, but the sessions are filled by the teams that are there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There may not be a whole lot of Alabama fans in that first game.
Right.
Second round game.
Yeah, the second round game.
We're playing Houston.
Right.
Now, Alabama, I mean, just ask Harvey Updike Jr. Alabama fans do not like Auburn. So maybe maybe they've bought tickets just to be, maybe they've found tickets just to root against them. That's
possible. Yep, they might.
Well, last thing, because we're filling out brackets, and I know we talked about Bruce Pearl, but what is because everyone always does it, and I want all three of you to tell me who the most likely 12 seed to beat the 5 is. I think it's Drake over Miami. I don't know if you have the brackets in front of you guys, but
I think Drake's got a legit chance to win that game.
I think some of the best. I don't think Oral Robert. What do you think of a team that does do so well in the Summit League, undefeated in the Summit League? Does that prove anything about like Oral Roberts at all, or are you just beating 18 teams in the Summit League?
A little bit of both. I mean, Oral Roberts is traditionally a good basketball program, so they. I have not seen him play all year, so I couldn't tell you, but it's not like all of a sudden they've shown up. They've been in the NCAA tournament a lot, so I suspect they're a pretty good team.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think they probably ran into a tough draw there with Duke, who's rolling right now. Yeah. I think that's going to be a tough matchup for him. I like Drake as well. Like, I think when I look at that matchup, I mean, Drake obviously have Tucker DeVries, but outside of that, like some really mature veteran guys, which I think pays dividends in the tournament too. So looking forward to that matchup for sure.
Miami's had some weird. Didn't they almost lose to Florida State not that long ago? I mean, I know Florida State's playing better than they did at the beginning of the season, but I don't trust Miami. I know they made the Elite Eight last year, but I would be. That's the one. To answer your question, Doug, from my event, that's the 112 upset I have on my bracket. Now I do have a 13 over a 4. I'll leave you in suspense on which one I have. But,
okay,
but that's the 12-5 one I have. Yeah.
Like I said, there's better callers than me. Let's get to them, and thank you guys thank you, Nick, for showing up on the show. Like I said, I don't care what generation of Hawkeye. Any Hawkeye is a great Hawkeye. So thank you, buddy.
Thanks, Doug.
I see you, Doug.
Always enjoyed Doug's calls. DC Hawkeye, appreciate the super chat. He says, if the NCAA tourney uses the Wilson ball, why doesn't Iowa switch to using the Wilson ball? Well, I think we've discussed this before. Appreciate the super chat from DC Hawkeye. Right? Money. That's what it comes down to right now. I did hear some people, there was some scuttlebutt on Twitter of some people who were concerned that the players were even talking about that subject today. I don't know if you guys saw that. I think they were asked. I think Patrick McCaffrey was asked about his thoughts on using the Wilson ball, and he basically said, "Well, I'm not going to worry about it. I can't worry about it. I'm not concerned with that." What are your thoughts on the whole subject, Gary? Even though we've discussed it at length in the past.
Well, it's just the way it is. With the shoe companies and all they do for the programs, most of them have basketball. So you gotta do the whole deal. I guarantee you, Iowa's got Wilson basketballs in their equipment. It's not like they don't have any Wilson balls. They don't play with them as much as the Nike ball, but I guarantee you I think the Big Ten was a Wilson ball too. So I'm sure in the last 2-3 weeks, that's all they've done has been playing with Wilson balls. So they'll be ready.
Yeah. And to go off of that too, obviously Iowa has Wilson balls they can use in practice. My experience with that was, once Selection Sunday hit, practice all the way leading up to was a Wilson ball. Shoot-arounds were all with Wilson ball. So you've been shooting with that basketball for a good, 3 or 4 days. I know there's a little bit of difference. I personally never minded it as much. I mean, from like a shooter's perspective, didn't bother me much. I know some of my like ball handling teammates maybe didn't gravitate towards it as much, but at the end of the day, everybody's playing the same basketball. We're all going to shoot the same basketball. It's going to be what it's going to be. So the bigger thing that I noticed, honestly, in like playing that tournament was the balls were pumped up a lot. They're a bit bouncier in the tournament. And like, I think whoever pumps those up, they just like fill it all the way up, which that can be an impact, and not so much the Wilson, just like that the ball is so bouncy that it can have an impact that way. But
and they're usually pretty new. Between the between pumping it up and having too much air in it and it being new, it can throw you off a little bit.
Maybe we need to hire Bill Belichick to the staff and take care of those inflated balls, man.
There you go.
Take care of that. Let's get a deflate
There
case
you go.
going. It is a topic that continues to get brought up. I remember getting brought up last year in the Richmond loss. Now, you brought up the Big Ten tournament, Gary. They did not shoot well against Ohio State. Now, it's one game, but they shot well all tournament last year in the Big Ten tournament. I'm assuming they were playing with Big Ten balls then. So, Nicholas, is that consistent with what you remember? Conference tournament was also Wilson ball?
Yeah, conference tournament, Wilson ball, NCAA tournament, Wilson ball. I mean, I felt obviously like last year, Iowa made a great run in the Big Ten tournament on a Wilson ball. So I think it really more of it comes down to the actual players playing the game and matchups that way more so than the basketball, since everybody's playing with the same one.
And Kurt does want to know if there is an issue, like you mentioned, maybe some of your ball handling teammates had maybe an issue. What is the issue? Is it more slick?
Just a little slicker, I think. Well, it's kind of like Gary mentioned, they're just newer, they're not as broken in. So I think there can be like a little bit slick that way, but I personally didn't bother me as much, but I know the bigger issue was kind of how inflated they were.
And my guess, again, having never played at that level, and Nicholas, this is more of a question for you. Would you say that 3-point shooting and a team's 3-point shooting performance away from home, maybe the ball's not quite as impactful as the arena, the backdrop behind the glass? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different factors. Obviously, if it's a further backdrop, that can play a little bit. But at the same time, you practice there for an hour the day before. You get to shoot in that arena. You warm up in that arena. So at the end of the day, I think a lot of it, and my personal opinion was I've shot from 3-point distance all my life. I'm a good 3-point shooter. I'm going to shoot it well in the game. That was kind of the things that I was, telling myself going into the game. And I know there's some concerns, based on some other things, but for my most part, I could control what I could control, and I was confident going into the game, just being ready to shoot that way.
All right, a couple questions in the chat before we go to our next caller. Let's see here. James says, as a walk-on, what made you choose Iowa? I know from being from Iowa, probably had a big part of it, but you probably would have had some opportunities elsewhere. Why did you ultimately choose Graham McCaffrey and the Hawks? Yeah, so I was born in Iowa City, grew up a big Iowa fan, ended up moving to Bettendorf in second grade, but my whole family went to Iowa, grew up going to Iowa football, basketball. So it was always my dream to do that. Coming out of high school, I wasn't overly recruited. I had one scholarship offer at the Division II school, Northwest Missouri State, who's the Division II powerhouse. They've pretty regularly compete at a high level there. So I really enjoyed kind of getting a chance to visit there. But ultimately, when Coach McCaffrey called, had me come in on an unofficial visit, and kind of realized that was a legitimate opportunity for me. It was hard to look anywhere else. So. I think I made a great decision. I loved it. Loved my time in Iowa City, and always appreciate that Coach McCaffrey just does things based on merit and how you're performing, and really enjoyed my time at Iowa. All right, let's go to our next caller. Tony is on the line. Tony, how you doing, sir?
Good. How about you? I'm glad Nicholas mentioned the overinflated balls. I saw that was mentioned today, that the managers have overinflated those balls. That was something they learned, I think, from past years, that the balls in the tournament were overinflated. I'm also disappointed in you, Cory. You didn't fill out an NIT or CBI bracket. What's wrong with you? You're not.
Who was it that turned down? Was it
North Carolina?
Well, no,
oh, sorry.
Well, no, Detroit University turned down the CBI, and it would have Antoine Davis would have had an opportunity to break the all-time Division I record for scoring. Why would you do that, Gary? Is that just I mean, I maybe I'm making way too big of a deal of that, but boy, that's quite a record to turn down.
That surprises me. Yeah.
And Gary, thank you for bringing that up, Tony. Yeah. I was very outspoken Sunday with the North Carolina news. I think it's a disgrace to college basketball to turn that down, and I think it's shame on whoever made that decision. If it's the players, then I think you got a culture issue. If it's a coach, then you've got a culture issue. Just your thoughts on them turning down the NIT.
Yeah, I get it. I don't like it either, but I can see both ways. I'd like to compete and play. Villanova played, but half their guys didn't play. So, I mean, so that's almost worse to me. I think being in it all together or don't be in it at all. So it's not surprising with North Carolina, but yeah, I think it's disappointing too.
Yeah, I don't like it, but I kind of get it as someone who when we played in the NIT, we were like the last team out, last team that didn't make it. We ended up winning a couple games in the NIT, but I remember just feeling like I'd rather almost be done than play in this. But at the same token, we had a lot of young guys who needed some more minutes and just needed more experience. And that's where the value in the NIT is getting guys a bit more reps, more experience. So obviously how North Carolina's roster is constructed, I'm not sure how valuable they might have seen that opportunity with some of their guys probably transferring or leaving or being a bit older that way. But that's kind of my take on it.
That's exactly why, and again, having not been in the situation, maybe I don't have a right to speak on it, but that's exactly my thought. I think about how much Kirk Ferentz talks about the importance of a bowl practice, even if they're playing in the American Standard Toilet Bowl. You have an opportunity to be with your guys for that much longer and be on the field together and build camaraderie. And I just think the turning down the opportunity, unless you just ransacked with injuries, and I don't think that's the case with North Carolina. We're 1 year into Hubert Davis's career there. You think
they did have a couple guys jump on the portal right away, and I think he allowed the players to make the decision. They didn't want to play, and there's nothing worse than taking a team somewhere that doesn't want to be there. Well, that could get real ugly. So
that's what I'm saying, Gary. If your team doesn't want to be there, and I understand what Nicholas is saying about being down and but it's your job as a coach to say, all right, guys, we got to pick our heads up. This is, we got to get better. We got to get back on the horse, right? Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, I think this is a little bit different, especially with such a quick turnaround. They got to go play Tuesday, and they're not invited. And it's almost like if we're not all in it together, then let's just not do it. I think that's kind of the thought they had.
All right, Tony. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. You prefer Nicholas or Nick? Sorry.
I prefer Nicholas. Yeah.
Okay. Nicholas, what was first of all, I want to thank you for being on and appreciate your time here and everything you did as a Hawkeye. What was that process? I believe you were a walk-on, correct? And then gained a scholarship. How exciting were both the call to be offered a walk-on and then I'm sure the face-to-face conversation of being offered a scholarship?
Yeah, the obviously getting a chance to just join the program was something I was very excited about. Just like from the beginning there, and then my time as a walk-on, I enjoyed it. I had a chance to redshirt my first year, be a scout team member, pretty much just play with reckless abandon for the most part and prepare our guys, for games that way, and really get a chance to hone my skills was something that I enjoyed. And then I would just after my redshirt year, just kind of asking what I need to do, and coach said, when the lights are on, we need you to perform that way, and I went out and did that, my first year, and really enjoyed it. Had a great year, with a pretty senior-laden group. Competed at a high level in the Big Ten, and then had a chance to win a game in March against Temple, and then we ran into a buzzsaw in Villanova. But that conversation after the year was a special one. That was always a goal of mine once I started as a walk-on, was to eventually get that scholarship, and I knew what that would mean for me and for my family and everything. And very appreciative to Coach McCaffrey that we had a few scholarships open, that he granted me one, and you really enjoyed that. Obviously, it was a big part of my life.
Now, for both Coach and Nicholas, what is the schedule like on Selection Sunday? Like watching the show, and then what goes on pretty much after that?
Well, I could take it from a coaching standpoint, and Nicholas from a player. We would have our team together and probably have a meal or something, and then sit around and then watch the tournament. Or a couple of years we won the Big Ten tournament, so you quickly shower and run up to a room to watch it because it's right after that last game in the Big Ten tournament. And then once you find out who you've got and where you're going, what we did is we broke up the next three teams. One guy took the team that we were going to play in the first round, and then the other two guys took the two teams that you would potentially play in the second round and go to work. It's got to be done pretty quick because the turnaround is pretty fast depending on whether you play Thursday or Friday. So it's a long Sunday night into Monday morning, but there's nothing better.
Yeah, I can give you two perspectives. One as a player, and then one as a kind of a grad assistant. So, as a player, whenever we either finished up at the Big Ten tournament, we kind of talked about the game, but then coach would always finish saying, if we knew we were going to be in the tournament, like, this is an opportunity for us to celebrate here. Like, not every team gets a chance to do this. This is going to be something that we're looking forward to celebrate. We're going to get together on Sunday. So we would get together on Sunday, have a meal, pretty much like watch the selection show together. And then depending on who we played, we pretty much just would meet right after the selection show, kind of go over the schedule. What we knew anything. I remember one year we played Davidson in the first round, and Coach McCaffrey had coached against Coach McKillop for years at UNC Greensboro. So he immediately was like, guys, I know this guy. Like, this is what they're going to run. This is what they're going to do. And we kind of just jumped in immediately. When I was a grad assistant, I was responsible for the film, having one game of film on every team we could potentially play. So I had their most recent game for Grand Canyon. And then once the selection show came out, we got Grand Canyon. I immediately was cutting up more film for our coaches to watch that way. So either way, though, it's an exciting time. Like, it's, something that you look forward to every year, that you're, get a chance to hear your name called, and really a great process that way.
I told Cory on the Selection Sunday show special, my fear always on Selection show was seeing Iona pop up, because it got me a little excited instead of Iowa. A side note with this ticket thing in Auburn, everyone's, kind of making a little bit of a deal about Auburn getting tickets. Keep in mind, Houston's the other team that was pretty much locked in to go there. I mean, Alabama and Houston have probably known for a long time they're going there, and Houston's the other team there. I don't think there's going to be as many Auburn fans as people might think, because Houston's in the same session as us. Just something to keep in mind. Nicholas, did you ever suffer the wrath of the Fran stare down?
No, that is a reserved look, it appears, for only Kelly Pfeiffer. That's a very unique one. I've seen coaches' different expressions, but that was a new one he pulled out that day. So it was certainly effective, but no, I have not been on the receiving end of that, and I don't think many people have.
What's the worst thing if as long as it's PG, what's the worst thing Fran's ever said to you?
Honestly, coach does a good job of kind of knowing what each player needs. I never really needed someone to kind of get on me or like get in my face about anything. Like, I did a pretty good job. Just like, I always pretty much had like a high motor. Like, I didn't need to necessarily like get in my face or anything. I do remember one time we played at Penn State. I turned the ball over, and it was like one of those like shot clock violations, and subbed me out, and he's just like, move the ball. And he like kind of got in my face that way. But outside of that, that was for people who watch Iowa basketball, that is very tame in comparison to some of the other interactions people have had. But yeah, so that's about all I got on that one.
Can you talk about him? Like, even though maybe you weren't on the direct receiving end of Fran's, what some people think to be wrath, but it seems like he is really loved by his players. Can you talk about how you can have a guy who's fiery like that, who sometimes maybe crosses the line with officials at times, but he still is loved by his guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like, coach definitely is going to be on officials. I think the main reason he does that is because he views that his players aren't getting a justified whistle, or his players aren't getting, the right way. And I think coach is always going to go out and defend his players, defend them. And that's how I kind of always viewed it. Like, coach was going up to bat for us. But yeah, I love coach, obviously, from on the court, pushing me to be successful, but also off the court, and a lot of things people don't see. Like, for example, my dad passed away here in January this year, and Coach McCaffrey was the first person to give me a call when he heard that news, and just like first person, just get on the phone, talk with me, kind of like talk about like my dad a little bit, and showed up to both services, was always there, and anything we needed, anything I needed, I always knew I had coach to rely on. So amidst some of the more fiery on court antics, there's also off the court where coach is looking out for you, and I always knew I had that on both ends.
And I just got one last question for both Coach and Nicholas. Since you guys both went to multiple tournaments, how was it the second time versus the first time? And Coach was more than 2 times, but like, how much did you learn going from that first time to the second time?
Yeah, that's a good question. The first time I went was with Iowa, and we went all the way to the Elite Eight. And I remember when it was over, I go, God, this is easy. We'll be going back to Elite 8 or Sweet 16 every year. It's a piece of cake, not that hard. And it's so difficult. So every time you get a win, you're just so grateful because if you don't, your season's done. And that team will not be the same again. That's the end of that team. There'll be some guys back, but not all of them. And it's for those that have never had a chance to be a part of it, they've really missing out because it's a unique experience that every time you did it, it just made you feel great.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, so I went my first time, and I think the goal every time you go is at least like stay the weekend. You got to win your first game, and then that just makes everything a bit more exciting, a bit more fun that way. But first time there, we were in New York, and it was just kind of exciting. Something I always dreamed of. Was playing the NCAA tournament, and then unfortunately, the second time was also my last time. So we missed a couple years there. So then going, in my last time, knowing it was my senior year, knowing this was the last time I was going to get a chance to play in it, you really enjoyed trying to cherish that moment a little bit, and kind of like Coach Close said, understanding going in, this is the last time that we may play together, and understanding what that could mean, and really just relishing that opportunity that way. So just those are a couple of things that I always keep in mind.
Thanks. And I didn't realize Coach was a fan of the boss. Now I've seen his wall from the other side. Behind him. Thanks,
go.
guys.
Yeah,
Go Hawks.
Thanks, Tony.
Big Bruce Springsteen guy. I mean, what's it must be in the well, it's I think partially age because I know Kirk Ferentz is a big Springsteen fan as well, Gary. You and Kirk ever go to any Springsteen concerts together?
No, I would have liked to have done that though. I've been to a few.
Have you?
Yeah.
Okay. Few questions in the chat. Kind of run through these somewhat quickly. Jim wants to know about game day experience through the eyes of a player. So this is a Nicholas question.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes. It's a little interesting, kind of based on timing. So my senior year, we were the first game of the day. So we were the 11:15, 12:15 a.m. game. So you got an hour to warm up, which was kind of nice. But a lot of it's just kind of going in and understanding. Kind of like Coach and I talked about earlier, this could be our last game together. But from there, it's also you go through the same routine. You have the same pregame meal, get ready the same, get your ankles taped, go shoot, try to keep everything as similar as possible. And then the only things that were a little bit different was a few more pauses, I think, just in terms of national anthems, being a little bit different, offset that way. But in terms of regular game day, in the tournament, I tried to keep things as routine as possible as much as I could.
And what was your favorite game you played as a Hawkeye? Was it the Wisconsin J-Bo shot and then your rebound that secured the win in the Kohl Center in 17?
That's definitely up there. I think that one was special. We had a chance to beat Michigan State when they were number 1 on our home court. Had a court storming that was pretty special. Winning a game in the NCAA tournament against Cincinnati my senior year was that was definitely up there. I think just, getting, kind of like we touched about, how special the tournament is. That one's up there. Yeah, a lot of good ones. I think, that Wisconsin one's pretty special. So I might go with that one.
Okay. Question here from Rick. He says, what do you and Coach think about Bruce making a point of telling Matt Gatens that all the signals have changed since he was with them? I think that's just a bit of gamesmanship. I don't know if you saw the quote from Bruce Pearl earlier, Gary, but my guess is it's a little bit of gamesmanship from Coach Pearl.
I think you're probably right, Corey. I think you're right on top of it.
ZJ wants to know, besides the game against UNLV, when it was your first year at Iowa, what was it like playing your first year against Santa Clara? Really good UTEP and Oklahoma team.
Yeah, we both years that we went out west, we played really good teams. We almost got beat by UTEP. They had Tim Hardaway. Really good team. It came down to the last possession. Santa Clara has always been a strong program on the West Coast. Oklahoma we beat to get to the Elite Eight game on Kevin Gamble's 3-point shot on the last possession. So, and that's what the NCAA is. How many games come down to last shots that you gotta convert. And fortunately, I've been on a few that have gone in, and unfortunately, I've been on a few that have not gone in or somebody else has made. So it's why they call it March Madness.
All right, let's go to James, who's been on hold. James, welcome to the show.
How you doing? How you doing today?
Hey, James.
Good. First off, I want to say, for Nicholas, just thank you for everything you did in Black and Gold, and like, you know, us fans, we are fans. Yes, we can get like rude sometimes, but I appreciate everything you had done as a school, and you had done for the school, and everything everybody that went there has done. So,
Yeah, thanks.
but first off, one thing I want to say. So, talk about the balls. I coach high school basketball, so like I understand kind of from our perspective, at least. I know it's different in game, but like for us, it's like they have the same ball too, right? Like high school has the same ball. So when you get to state, there's the same ball, right? But they tell every school you can use whatever ball you want, if that makes sense, right? So like if we want to use a different ball, we can. But then when we get to the tournament, we have to use that ball, if that makes sense. So like it's not a sponsored thing, but you can use whatever ball you want when you get to the when you're playing a game.
I don't know how much they've practiced through the Big Ten tournament, but it was talked about earlier. They've had extra time. I mean, obviously they were successful with Wilson ball in the Big Ten tournament last year. They've had like an entire week to expose themselves to the slippery Wilson ball if they so chose.
And it's not just the Wilson ball. You know, all teams got different basketballs.
Yeah,
so they probably have got 5 or 6 different types of basketballs that they bring out that week of practice. Like Nicholas said, for a long time, we had Sterling balls at Wisconsin. I guarantee they had some Sterling balls down there they practiced with. So it's not quite as unknown as it might appear to be.
See, what's your thought, Nicholas? What's your thought on like prepping? Like, obviously, you were a walk-on, and I don't know how much you played your first couple of years. But like, what's your thought on your preparation? Like, what was your preparation going into games?
Yeah, I mean, our coaches do a great job of providing us as much information as possible from a scouting report perspective. I think I will like specifically, you know, from play calls, player percentages, understanding what when we're walking into a game. I definitely always felt prepared. I didn't feel underprepared by anything that way. Personally, I think, you know, how I keep myself prepared is also, you know, controlling the things I control from like a sleep perspective, you know, making sure my body was ready to roll. You know, what was I eating, pregame meal, like trying to keep things as standard as possible. But then from a mindset perspective, just playing with confidence and playing without fear, like just understanding I'm going to go out, and I understood my role. I was probably going to play for about 4 or 5 minutes. I'm going to fly around, and then I'm going to get TV timeout. I'm going to get a break. Then I'm going to go back in and do the same thing at some point. So just kind of understanding what my role was, and then, you know, going out and being able to execute.
That first game you ever got in as like a Iowa Hawkeye, how did it feel growing up in the state and like wanting to be a Hawkeye all the time? How did it feel when you got in the first ever game you got into?
I was so nervous. I remember the first game, I was so nervous. But what was helpful, though, is then once the game's going, then you're just fine. You know, I remember like walking in kind of like being nervous, but then, all right, ball's in, I got to defend somebody. And then immediately you're just back from the habits you've already built. So definitely was a special moment for my family, just a special moment for me. But yeah, really enjoyed it.
One more question really for you. I just want to kind of, you know, you don't really get to talk to the Iowa players. I get to talk to, you know, Coach Close and Cory all the time. So it's different. But what was it like to see your brother go to Iowa for a little bit, like just to follow kind of your path for a little bit? What was it like to see him? I know he went to see him. Great career after that. I just was wondering what it was like to see him go to Iowa for a little bit.
Yeah, that was special. Getting a chance to, that was my senior year when he was on the team. So getting a chance to have 1 year with my brother as my teammates and get a chance to enjoy that experience with him. Just kind of, you know, understanding, you know, going through that whole year, knowing it was my last year, and knowing that my brother was just kind of beginning his career a little bit too. So it's been a blast getting to see him grow and develop from, you know, when he was a walk-on to Iowa now, you know, to what he was able to accomplish at Siena. So that was probably one of the most special parts of my senior year that way. And definitely a good question.
Yeah. My bad. A couple more things. There's a couple more things. First off, Siena. You know, that's where Fran was before he came here. So did Fran have anything to do with him going to Siena, or?
Yeah, he definitely helped. So the current coach at Siena was Coach McCaffrey's director of basketball operations when Coach McCaffrey coached at Siena. So there was some connections there. Also, understanding that they had a need, you know, for a 4-man, and that was definitely Michael's skill set. So I think it was kind of a mixture of both things. Michael had a couple other options, but all in all, it was a great decision to go to Siena.
Yeah, and then one more thing. Are you guys going for Nevada tonight, or are you going for Arizona State? Are you going to root for Alfred or not?
I don't really know. Let's see. They're the winner of I got the winner of that game losing. Who do they even play?
I'm
TCU.
TCU.
Yeah, I see TCU win. As long as Mike Miles is, I think they'll win.
yeah.
So I don't really care. I don't really have a vendetta against. I know some people just hate Steve Alford. I don't. So I don't know. I hope it's just a good game. I guess that's what I'd say. Gary, you probably agree with that.
Yeah, that's kind of my same sentiment.
For sure. And the guard you talking about, the guard for Houston earlier, Sasser, they said they don't know if he's gonna play, but like they're expecting him to play. So like he's still hurt, but they said he was still hurt as what they said last time, but they're expecting him to play.
Yeah.
Try to play through it at least.
Yeah,
So
groins though, boy, you don't know how they're going to react. It'll be interesting.
Right. Thank you, James.
All right, yep. Go Hawks tomorrow and Friday. Hopefully we can get 2 wins. That's the most important thing. But thank you for everything you guys do, and enjoy your night.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, James.
Okay, we need to kind of speed things along here as we enter the final phase of our show, and I got a couple more questions, Auburn-related questions. Jesse says, how has Auburn been against the full-court press this year? That'd be a better question for you, Gary. Have you watched enough Auburn basketball to have an answer to that?
Well, they're a little loose with the ball. I mean, they play fast. I mean, they'll turn over a little bit. I don't know how much they've been pressed. They do press, so I'm sure they've worked against it. So I'm guessing Fran will probably throw it out there and just see how effective it is. They're not a great 3-point shooting team. So one of the things you worry about in pressing is giving up open threes. So I would guess they'll give it a look and then kind of see how they react to it.
I got to be careful here. Go ahead, Nicholas, if you had something to add on Auburn.
Yeah, I would just add, I think we're going to see multiple defenses from Iowa tomorrow is what I would assume. I think that we'll definitely see the press at some point. I looked at some of their assist turnover numbers. None of Auburn's guards really blew me away. Like somewhat like solid, but nothing like
Right.
oh man, I think this person's going to just dice it up, So I'm sure we'll see it. I'm sure we'll see some 2-3 zone, just kind of like Coach Close touched on if they're not shooting it all that well. We'll see some zone. Only I think the big issue from that is being able to rebound out of it and then run. That's always kind of the issue with zone. But we'll see a lot of different defenses, I'm sure.
I'm not going to just say everything comes down to one stat, but Gary, what's the stat you and I have continued to, and I think it's pretty clear you and I haven't come up with this, but what's the stat that we continue to talk about is the biggest indicator of whether this Iowa team wins or loses?
How they shoot the three?
How they shoot the three. And ironically enough, we have weakness versus weakness here because Iowa, they're shooting, I shouldn't say weakness. It is weakness against weakness. 3-point shooting defense, Iowa 320. That's their ranking, national ranking, 320th in the country. And Auburn in 3-point shooting is 311th. So which will be better, right? I mean, I would expect, as you brought up, Gary, maybe you press a little bit more because you can get away with it against a team that doesn't shoot the three.
Yeah, they don't shoot the three very well. They're not a very good shooting team, period. Free throw line, threes. They're more of a slashing, take the ball, the hoop, dunk on you team like that.
Are we going to see a lot of zone? Is that what you're telling me then?
Maybe. He hasn't played as much zone this year that he normally has, so I'll be curious. But this would be a team you might zone a little bit more just because of their ability to drive and their ability not to shoot the three. So, yeah, you could see that.
Any thoughts on that, Nicholas?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. I think the other, concern with going into the press is also just giving up, easier layups at the rim if they break it. So I think if it's a scenario where they're not seeing a whole lot of offensive success, maybe we would not see it as much, but definitely to throw it out there, change of pace type of thing. And, maybe get a chance to speed them up a bit. But I'd expect to see a fair amount of zone or just not as much, up in you man-to-man, just given this opponent.
And this is a question I think we've discussed in the past as well, and Nicholas can probably attest to it. How often does Iowa use set plays? I mean, it's obviously a motion offense. My guess is you're going to say rarely, obviously, in out-of-bounds plays. You're going to see it more out of timeouts, etc. But how would you describe the Iowa offense?
Yeah, coach likes to let our guys play. Just go motion offense. That's the best thing. There's no real scout that you can obviously understand kind of what we're doing, but it's not with it not being a set play. There's a lot of freedom of movement that way. The one thing I would say it's a little different come tournament time, maybe Coach Close can attest to this, is it's nicer playing an opponent that hasn't seen you for the last, hasn't watched every single one of your games of film and knows your sets. They've been, guarding your sets for 10 years type of thing. I've found success. Some of our sets that we ran back in November, December that we just didn't run anymore because they already had them scouted, bringing those back and having some success on set plays. So I definitely think we're going to see a few more set plays from Iowa, maybe after timeouts, or if, coach likes to call a set play if like another team's on a run, things like that. So I definitely expect us to kind of, you'll see a few more set plays maybe come tournament time, but things are rolling. No need to really shake it up.
Gary, can you talk about Bruce Pearl? Doug didn't mention it, but it was brought up the other day. Can you talk a little bit about what you can speak on the Bruce Pearl, Illinois blackballing situation? What you remember?
I forgot everything about it. That's a long time ago. It's I don't think I'll go there.
Okay, what's your relationship like? Let's take it a different direction. What's your by the way, just for everybody, I told Gary I was going to ask him. We were going to bring that topic up, so I'm not catching him totally off guard. But Gary, can you talk about your relationship with Bruce? I mean, you obviously worked together long enough to where I'm sure you built a friendship. There has been some controversy. Obviously, that situation notwithstanding, but of course, the situation at Tennessee and the violations, there have been some things that have sort of muddled his legacy. He's obviously a terrific basketball-minded basketball coach, but he seems like a genuinely nice guy that maybe has made a few mistakes along the way.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how you describe it. I mean, Bruce and I got into the profession at the same time, young guys just trying to make their way at Stanford. I think we were both in our mid-20s. I mean, it was just, I went from a high school job to being at Stanford in 1 year. I couldn't believe it. And he was there right with me. And so we were there for 3 years trying to build that program up. Then we came to Iowa and I was in the hospital when his daughter was born. And, so we're good friends. Not as much now just because, separation, but he's a terrific coach. His guys love to play for him. He's a lot like Fran in terms of having their players back and style of play and the whole thing. So they're going to be a tough out. He's won everywhere he's been, and he has had a few slip ups along the way, but we all make mistakes. He's recovered, and if I were to win tomorrow, they're going to have to play well because Auburn will be well prepared and they'll play hard, and so it's going to be a challenge.
Am I correct in saying there's a number of parallels between Kelvin Sampson, how he coaches, or at least how his teams play, and maybe a little bit of controversy here and there with Bruce Pearl and how he coaches and his history? Is that fair? I don't know how much.
Well, they both were out of the game for a while, due to their NCAA problems, and both have come back and have gone to the Final Four. They've recovered and their careers. Houston plays a little bit different than Auburn does. Auburn's a little more up and down, and Hughes is a little more half court, grind it out. Not that they won't run, but it should be a track meet, I would guess, tomorrow. I think it's going to be up and down. I think the team that can stop the other team from getting easy baskets is probably going to win.
I know it's apples to oranges. We're comparing Big Ten versus SEC statistics here, but if they're both playing up and down, Iowa averages 80 points per game on the season. Auburn in the 73 range, which ranks 150th compared to Iowa's 18th. We mentioned assist to turnover ratio. Iowa terrific in that category, third in the country in assist to turnover ratio. Auburn 113th, so they'll get up and down, but they'll also turn the ball over. They're not very good they're not terrible, but they're not great from the free throw line. Pretty comparable. These two teams are pretty comparable on the glass. And we talked about 3-point shooting. So I think it's gonna be a close game. Nicholas, is that kind of how you're feeling as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be close. I think it's pretty even. I think I'm all for a track meet. Let's run. Let's get up and down. I think that's plays to our strength. I know it's kind of what Auburn likes to do too, but I think when we're getting up and down, when we're scoring in transition, that's when we're most effective. So it's gonna be a close one. It's a good game, 8-9, and I think at this point too, you're in the NCAA tournament. Every team's a good team. Everybody at some point has deserved to be here. So that's also what makes this tournament fun.
All right, last caller of the night. And Gary, I saved the best for last.
Okay.
Mr. Ryan. How you doing, sir?
Hey, gentlemen. Thank you.
Did you just wake up, Ryan?
No. I had a long day today. Let me pause 5 seconds so Taffy Cat can hit the mute button.
You what? Say that again. What happened?
I just paused 5 seconds so Taffy Cat can hit the mute button.
What does that mean? Am I missing something? What am I missing?
Or reread your chats, man.
Okay.
Anyway,
I'll
that's her right. She apparently thinks I'm a terrible caller, but that's okay. Hey, first of all, gentlemen, thank you for taking my call and being here tonight. Nicholas Baer, I just want to say, in all my years, and I'm not a guy who gets too excited about walk-ons who redshirt, even though Nimmers I'm pretty excited about. You won an award in 2019, and out of anybody who played at Iowa, you reminded me of a certain person whose jersey is up on the rafters. And you know the name, and Coach Close absolutely was pivotal. So thank you for everything. You were a firebrand for Iowa, and thank you for everything, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, very kind.
Coach Close, I'm on a little late. I heard a rumor you know a little bit about Bruce Pearl. I don't remember the Tom Davis era. I'm so young. How do you think this will turn out? And can we beat Houston if we get by Auburn? Sasser has an injured groin. He's their best player. They're an awesome team regardless. But what are the keys of making the Sweet 16? And the last thing I'm going to say, Cory, is, I'm watching all this NFL draft stuff. And if I'm Iowa, I do all I can to trade down to 9 with Illinois to play in Des Moines against Arkansas so the Illini can get their pound of flesh on Bruce Pearl.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't do that. That would have been interesting, because sometimes they do that kind of stuff. So
your thoughts, Gary, on for the record, I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer. When I came out, I said I think it's a bad draw. That's just my first. That's my first. Like I say, I think Alabama's a better matchup. Not saying Iowa can't win, but I think Alabama would have been a better matchup. I think Kansas was probably a better matchup. And I don't love Auburn as a first round, mainly because of that one stat, because of how well those two teams defend the 3. And that has been where Iowa's faltered. When they don't shoot the 3 well, they typically don't win. But just your thoughts on trying to get to the Sweet 16 for first time this century.
Yeah. Well, I think first off, you did mention the thing about the 3-point defense, which is a bit of a concern, but I like the fact they go up and down, because I think Iowa's much more comfortable playing that way than playing a half court game. Where they've really struggled or have struggled is in the half court when they can't get up and down a lot. So I think they'll be allowed to do that. So for that reason, I think they've got a good shot. I think it's going to come down to whose defenses in the half court are better, and vice versa, whose offenses in the half court can score, because I think both teams are going to get some transition baskets. It's going to be who's better in the half court, and I think it's pretty even. So to get beyond that and to get to Houston, I think the one thing I would say is I don't, maybe with the exception of possibly Alabama, I don't see the number 1 seeds as being just unbeatable. And some years in the past, you go, God, a Duke team, you don't want. We had 2 years in a row at Iowa. We had to play Duke in the second game as an 8-9 seed when they're in the middle of their 2 championships in a row. And we knew we'd have to play almost a perfect game to beat them. It's not like that this year. So, I can see some 1 seeds getting knocked out before the Sweet 16 if somebody can play well. So, but you got to win the first one before you can get a chance to do that. And they're going to have their hands full tomorrow, because, as I said before, the Auburn will play hard. They'll be well prepared, and they'll be a tough out.
Anything to add to that, Nicholas?
Yeah, the main thing I'd add is I think the other key point is probably going to be offensive rebounding as well. Like I think, with Auburn not shooting the ball that great, no one knows they don't shoot it as well as like they know that as well, and they're going to go back and try and get some seconds. I don't think that they've just from based on like the stats that I've looked at, I don't think they necessarily rebound great defensively, and that's something that Coach Caffey always likes to push. And I think if we can kind of go back and get some seconds, especially if some of those shots aren't falling from three, if that 3-point defense is being pretty tough, I think getting a chance to get some second chance points, that's going to be huge, and hopefully get out and run as well.
Yeah,
Nicholas,
I think the other place they could beat him is at the free throw line. Auburn does foul a little bit.
Yeah.
They kind of fly around and leave their feet, and so if Iowa can get some penetration and make some solid moves and get to the free throw line and get some of those guys in foul trouble and get some points there, they could maybe get an advantage, because I think opponents are shooting over 20 free throws a game against them, so they're a bit foul prone.
Both teams do a good job on offense getting to the foul line, so we may see a lot of free throws tomorrow. Iowa has had some struggles as well, defending without fouling, Gary. So that could easily come into play. Lemansky says, Coach Gary and Dr. Tom, always classy. Appreciate the super chat there from Lemansky. And I want to ask you, Nicholas, what is this? Is I grabbed this from your Twitter profile. This has become an iconic photo. What makes this photo so special to you?
Yeah, so that is after we lost to Tennessee in round of 32. That's my senior year. So my career ended 3 seconds ago in that picture. But I saw Luka Garza, obviously, right there with me. And I think for me, just, kind of like just my first thought was, seeing him be upset. And that's just, when you see somebody you love, you comfort them that way. But to me, I just told him, hey, you're going to be back. There's more for you here. And I think for me, that's always a special picture. Just I think a lot of times that kind of like is kind of how I viewed myself as a leader, just kind of being that senior leader and being someone can rely on. So pretty special. And obviously Luka definitely had a chance to go back and has done far more than just playing the NCAA tournament, which has been pretty special to watch his career catapult off of that. But just a special moment that way.
Gary, that's the kind of picture that encapsulates a good teammate and a good Hawkeye, right? I mean, no better way to go out, obviously. Yeah, painful way to go out, but I remember seeing that on national TV, and that game had to be a blast, though, right? I mean, I don't remember as a person, as a fan. I'm not just we don't just talk. I'm a fan at heart. As a fan, I remember watching that game. There was not a more electric half of basketball, and let's call a spade a spade. You go to overtime against that team. You score one more point in regulation, and nobody's talking about Iowa's inability to make a Sweet 16. You guys have been really, really close.
Yeah, going in, I think we're down 23 at half. We were down at 25 at one point, and Tyler Cook played phenomenal second half. Joe Wieskamp played well, got some things going, turned him over a little bit. Hit some, big time shots against the shot clock. And that's just kind of once you get rolling, that's March, right? Crazy things start happening. You make up crazy leads. I remember, I think we had the ball tied with a minute 45. We ended up turning it over. So I still think about that from time to time. But outside of that, a great, all around team effort to make the comeback. And obviously wish we would have had a chance to, advance the Sweet 16, but went out with my head held high with how we, competed and, came back in that game for sure.
You had a pretty big tip to yourself, rebound tip to yourself off a free throw miss that kicked out to J-Bo, and obviously a huge shot in that game. That created momentum in the comeback. That's
one of my favorite memories for sure. And just because one of my staples is I always knew Jordan Bohannon was kind of like my kick out three guy. Whenever I got an offensive rebound, especially towards that part of the career when he was being marked so closely in the man-to-man, when you get an offensive rebound, it's kind of like a broken play. And those are really the only time he's going to be wide open. So there were probably some times where I could have even probably just gone and finished and scored a layup. But anytime I got an offensive rebound, is hey, where's Bohannon? I got to get him loose. And that's a guy, when he gets loose, he could hit 7, 8, 9, if he hits his first. So, but yeah, that stage in the game was definitely finding Bohannon, and that was definitely a special moment.
All right, we're going to do one more thing here because Vincent jumped on here late, so it's going to have to be quick, Vincent, because Gary's going to get annoyed. The Alford crew, Steve Alford crew is trailing early, Vincent. Alford and company trailing 13-3 in the first few minutes of the game. Not a great start for Steve Alford's Wolfpack. Anyways, Vincent, welcome to the show.
Oh, I hadn't even checked to see what that score was. And I'll be quick. Nick, I just want to say from one Bettendorf guy to another, such a huge fan watching you play. You always seem to be either in the right spot at the right time for the right rebound or just hitting a clutch three. Just super fun to watch. 2 questions, and I'll get off of here. Nicholas, if you can kind of maybe give us fans what the difference in atmosphere is like when you go from just Big Ten play to NCAA tourney play, and then a question for both Coach and Nick. When it comes to this game, if there's something specific you're going to throw out there as a coach to make sure that you guys have these players prepped for, what would that be to make them or put them in a position to be successful come tomorrow night? And I'll leave you guys with that. Thanks, Cory.
Thanks, Vincent.
Thanks, Vincent. Yeah, I can touch on that first question with, different atmospheres. I think NCAA tournament just being like for the most part, like a neutral environment. Obviously, I know there's gonna be some Auburn fans here tomorrow, but I think just like some of the jitters that maybe you don't normally feel, and some like Big Ten arenas, you're just kind of in the flow of the season. But yeah, just understanding you're on the biggest stage in college basketball. Like for me, I knew, hey, we're playing on CBS. Like we got, these guys tomorrow, they got the A team broadcasts. They got, everything going that way. So things to think about. But yeah, once the ball gets going, though, you're just playing basketball. You're doing everything you've been doing since you were young, playing since a young age. And then I guess from the second question with, one point of emphasis I would think Coach is probably hitting on is run, get easy buckets in transition. The main way I know that is because that's pretty much was always the number one thing we talked about at Iowa when I was playing was, get out and run in transition, get our transition game going because that fuels a lot of other areas. So that's what I would imagine be the number one thing along with rebounding.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think you want to, keep doing the things you've been doing. And this is not the time to change. Play to your strengths, try to, stay away from your weaknesses and, play hard, have fun, but don't do anything drastically different than what's gotten you there because that usually doesn't work. So like in his case, in transition, they're good at that. So they want to, try to make that happen. And it'll be Auburn's challenge to try to stop it and vice versa. So it's an amazing experience. It's just different. It's hard to describe, but maybe it's the one and done. Maybe it's because everybody's focused in on it. It's really unique. I got to be in 22 of them, and every one of them was a little bit different. All of them were a blast. I mean, it's just, and when it ends, it's awful. I mean, no matter what stage of the tournament you're in, when you lose, it takes you a while to recover. So hopefully in Iowa's case, we're not going to have to worry about it until next weekend.
This has been a fun 79 minutes to both of you, and a reminder to everyone. 79, Gary. We're
That's
about
Nicholas. We were usually much quicker.
Yeah,
okay. I'll remember that.
So, a reminder to everybody: enter our bracket challenge. Your chance to win free Iowa Smokehouse. First place gets a $100 Iowa Smokehouse e-gift card. Second place gets a $75 e-gift card, and third place gets a $50 e-gift card. You can sign up and enter your bracket on ESPN. Click the link in our description. Got to get your brackets in there before the first game's tomorrow by, 11 a.m. or so. So, again, do that as soon as this show posts. Get over to ESPN, get your brackets, and get those set and get some great products from Iowa Smokehouse. It's been sponsoring the channel throughout the basketball season. Lemansky with the super chat. He says, on behalf of Nicholas, nobody gave more effort. Can certainly
Thanks, Lemansky.
So, again, just great to catch up with you, Nicholas, and
you bet.
Hopefully we'll get you on the show again soon. This game tomorrow. Just final thoughts from me, and then I'll just, if you guys have anything else. This game tomorrow, it's just weird. You compare this to last year, and I remember saying prior to the Richmond game last year, hey, I think they got a good draw, got a potential matchup with a Providence team that I think was very beatable. They come out and lay an egg like this. I would not be shocked to see Iowa win tomorrow, and who knows, maybe Houston's best player, Sasser, doesn't play, and all of a sudden Northern Kentucky pulls off a huge upset. I mean, unlikely to happen, but things can change. This is the tournament setting, Gary, as you alluded to earlier. Crazy things happen. This could be the year where they get off the schneid.
Yep, and there's no doubt. That's why everybody watched it. It's just every tournament's got something crazy that's going to happen, and it's everybody's 0-0, and you got to play well. If you don't play well, you're usually gone, and it's not like an NBA 7-game series where the better team will probably win most of them because it lasts longer. In this case, with one game and 60, 70 possessions, if you can win the majority of them, then you got a chance to advance. It's all about finding a way to advance.
And just one of the more balanced, I will say this, compliment to Bruce Pearl's guys, very balanced scoring and production overall from his backcourt, from his front court. Wendell Green averaging 14, 4, and 3. Johnny Broome, the transfer from Morehead State, 14 and 8. Jalen Williams, 11 and 5. Alan Flanagan, 10 and 5. I mean, they got weapons all over the place. A lot of production, a lot of athleticism. So I guess maybe final keys for you, Nicholas, for Iowa to get it done tomorrow.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we maybe haven't touched on, I think it's a big game for Tony Perkins tomorrow. I think, for him, if they're playing that man-to-man, are having a hard time getting downhill or getting in the lane. I think for him, being able to create offense, draw defenders, be able to kind of create maybe some more of those open threes, and then also look for himself to get in the lane. And really, I know obviously there's a lot of like impact players with like Chris and Phillip, but I think for the most part, I think we're a different team when Tony's playing at a high level. So I think it's going to be a big game for him tomorrow and hopefully a big tournament.
It'd be great if you get Peyton Sanford to shoot well, right, Gary?
That as well.
Oh yeah. There's no doubt. He could be instant offense off the bench if he can knock a few down, no doubt.
Thursday and Friday are always better. I almost prefer a late Friday game for Iowa because if Iowa somehow loses tomorrow, Gary, it's going to kind of ruin my Friday watching the NCAA.
Yeah, but if they win, then you're in, and you can watch all the games knowing you got another game coming.
Absolutely.
You got to look at the positive rather than the negative.
Well, here's the positive, Gary. I've got from 11:30 tomorrow to 5:50 to watch basketball and feel great. So hopefully we'll feel great after that, and we'll be previewing maybe an Iowa-Houston game on Saturday. So
that'd be awesome.
Again, appreciate both of you, Nicholas, Coach Close, as always, and we'll plan on Iowa postgame with Coach Close tomorrow following Iowa and Auburn in the first round of the NCAA tournament down in Birmingham. Gentlemen, appreciate the time, and go Hawks tomorrow.
Go Hawks. Thanks guys.